Crafty Gemini. I post weekly videos right here on my YouTube channel, and in this video tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to make this really cool lava lamp quilt block using my 10-inch slicer. To make our lava lamp block, we're going to need our 10-inch by 10-inch squares, and you can see I'm using all the pieces from one collection, which is a really easy way for you to make sure that everything matches. And when you're using my 10-inch slicer for these projects, you can really swap out a bunch of the different components to get some really different looking blocks. For the basic lava lamp one, you're going to take your 10-inch by 10-inch square. I tend to like to use a rotating mat just because it's easier for me to spin around and make multiple cuts. But you're going to take your 10-inch square. Make sure you have your 10-inch slicer handy, and I always include a link for you in the description box on where you can buy it. Now fold it in half just like I did. It doesn't matter in which direction because remember it's a square, so it's going to be the same. Fold it down. Now I want you to locate the fold, and on mine it's up here. Take your 10-inch slicer and I want you to line it up so that the shortest 2.5-inch edge of the 10-inch slicer is lined up on that fold. And also make sure that it's flush. So here's a 2.5-inch edge on the fold. It's flush on the left. And at the bottom here, because it's 10 inches folded in half, this should be lined up at the 5-inch mark on my ruler. Then you're going to follow the line of the edge of the ruler and make that cut. And that's the first cut you made. Now we need to repeat the same cut mirror image on the other side so we can get our lava lamp shape, okay? So I'm going to spin this around 180 degrees. And I'm going to make the identical cut on this side, but in mirror image, okay? So again, locate the fold. Now it's down here, all right? And line up the 2.5-inch edge on the fold so that it's flush again at the fold on the left, and the top raw edge should be lined up at the 5-inch mark on the ruler. So it's really simple. You're just basically making one cut on one side, and then it's like you're cutting the mirror image. You just flip the ruler and cut on the opposite side. Now when we open this up, you can see that we've cut our square into 3 different components. And when you do that to all your squares in an entire 10-inch stack of squares, you can see that we're going to use every single one of these in it. And we're just going to play a swapping game now. So if I repeat this to all my blocks like I've done here, you can see from the coordinating collection, now I can just swap out a few of the different components. So let me show you a few different variations. One way to do it is by keeping the outer pieces the same. And if you notice, these two are identical cuts. Okay, so let's remember that. Now this center lava lamp shape can be swapped out. So if I keep the outer pieces the same print and don't touch those, I can take this one out and go to my stack of other ones that I've cut up and play around until I get the one that I want in the center. Okay, that one doesn't have enough contrast for my liking, so I'm going to take that one out. You can do one that's really, really contrasting. This is probably the one that I would go with here because it's really nice and bold, and you really get that defined lava lamp shape right there. So now you would piece these together, but you can see that all the cuts from all the squares, if they're cut the identical way like I just showed you, are all going to be equal and even. So you can just swap them out. So one option, like I said, is to keep these 2 background prints the same. If you want to create blocks that instead of featuring just 2 different prints, feature 3 prints from the collection, you'll get a lot more visual interest, and I'll show you how easy it is to do that. So let's take away one of these outer pieces and let's replace it with another one from the identical cuts that we've made from another print in the collection. So here's another option. Okay, something a little bit different, still will fit in and get pieced in the exact same way because they're all the same cuts, but now we feature 1, 2, and 3 different prints from the collection into the one block. All right, so for piecing these guys together, there's going to be a few different ways to do it. I'm going to try to share with you what I think is the easiest way to do it. Notice I don't have any pins here just yet. I really only use 1 pin because I find that it's easier to kind of stitch around this area here when you're able to manipulate the fabric a little bit more. So we're going to piece this like this. Okay, so let me just grab 2 of them at a time. You're going to put one on top of the other, pretty sides touching, and you're just going to match point to point, only to the center intersection. And this is actually where I'm going to put my pin. So just look underneath it, about to where it matches, okay? And I just come in 1/4 inch and just put a pin. That's just my guide. So I can kind of break this up into 2 straight line seams that I need to sew. And I'm going to start up at the top with my 1/4 inch seam. And this is just a straight line, okay? You're not going to come all the way to the tip here, but I'll show you. when I start to kind of get around it, the trick here, so that you don't get a pleat right at that intersecting point, is that you're going to want to kind of stitch a curve around that area. So I start to come out, I kind of get to right where that intersection is. Stop with the needle down in the fabric, lift your presser foot up so you can now move this, and you can safely remove that pin now. So I'm going to notice, first of all, how you're going to have to sew this. This straight line needs to be matched up with this one to stitch, but you can see that the seam doesn't match here. So we're going to take 2 stitches that are going to work its way over, so then we can stitch it straight. So it sounds a little confusing. I'm going to show you like this first, and then I'll show you a really close-up shot of the other one so you can see it a little bit better. So I'm going to lift this, and notice, first of all, this is all the way over here. I'm going to bring it in a little and take a stitch. I'm going to lift up the presser foot again and bring it in some more and take another stitch. Lift the presser foot up and bring it in all the way. Okay? And as long as you see that you're not stitching over a fold in the fabric, it will lay straight for you. So if you need to kind of push this out of the way to make sure you have no pleat there, go ahead and do that. Take one more, and then making sure that every stitch I take is on flat fabric. Now I can stitch straight across. So you'll see the seam is always going to be a little bit smaller on this one. It doesn't matter. If you're using about a 2.0 stitch length, just make sure you're not piecing your patchwork pieces with a really large stitch length where this can kind of come apart easier. Just keep it nice and small, and you can see that when I open it up, it's going to lay nice and flat. There are no pleats there. So let's head over to the ironing board and press this so you can see how nice and flat it lays. And then I'll give you a close-up shot of me attaching the other one. All right, and you can see how nicely that lays nice and flat. Now, notice here, the angle is not a super sharp angle. And after you come in with the seam allowance, it really ends up being more of a rounded angle here. So I think that makes it a little bit easier. So just do what I showed you, carefully kind of round off that corner to get you to come back down so that the whole thing is nice and flat after you press it. Because you can see here, there's no puckering or anything, okay? The stitch line goes right here, and it kind of just lightly curves around and comes back out this side. So now let's head back to the sewing machine, and I'm going to show you how to attach the other side with a little bit more of a close-up shot so you can see the detailed view of what goes on right here as we're stitching. All right, so let's attach the other one and see if this gives you a better angle view so you can see what you need to do at home. All right, actually, I want to switch this out. I think this is too close in fabric, in color, like in contrast, so let me grab a separate piece real quick. All right, let's do this one. So again, I put it in the orientation of how I want the block to look, all right? And then we're going to take one on top of the other, pretty sides touching. Again, just grabbing that one pin, okay? I want to line it up here at the top and down here to the intersection. All right, so we're going from here to here and putting a pin just to hold it around the point that I need to start working my way around. Okay, so 1/4 inch seam, and we're just sewing a straight line here first. I'm going to pull the pin, leave it so that the needle stops in the fabric, okay? I'm going to lift my presser foot. I'm going to bring this over a little bit. Take a stitch. Lift up again. Bring it over a little bit more. Making sure that that fabric underneath the needle there is super flat. Take another stitch. Presser foot up again. Bring it over. You can even take a third one if you don't feel comfortable making that full swing. Take one more stitch, presser foot up, and now bring it all the way over. So you're basically easing in that kind of stark angle that we need to take. So we're going in this direction, and in order for you to flip back and come this way, you need to kind of curve around the corner. Now you can see I'm in the perfect position to just stitch myself a straight line here. So we'll bring it down now. All right, so there it is. I can see that I have no pleats in the actual stitching line. And now you'll see that when I press this nice and flat, it's going to lay flat for us and there's no puckers. All right, and there we have it. a nicely pieced lava lamp block. There's no puckers on either side. You can see how the patchwork lays nice and flat. And all you need to do is repeat that to all your blocks. The first few ones might be a little bit tough to kind of get the handle on it, but go back and watch the replay of what I just showed you to do. And once you do a few of them, I feel like you'll definitely get the little handle of it and be cranking out these cool lava lamp blocks in no time. Okay, and after you have your full stack of blocks like this, then you're going to want to probably trim them up. Depending on how precise you were in your piecing, you may or may not need to trim anything up. You'll see that it's like a little bit off. It's barely anything that needs to be trimmed up. But you can also use my 10-inch slicer as a ruler to square up your blocks. Instead of reaching for another square ruler, notice that this bottom angle here is a 90-degree angle on my ruler, and I did that also for a reason. You can use it on your 10-inch slicer blocks to square up your blocks. So I'm going to line it up down here, scoot it all the way over, and I know that here to here is a 90-degree angle. So now I can trim this up to square up my block correctly. Okay, you can see I just trimmed away a little teensy bit. I'm going to turn it all the way over, repeat this on the parallel side to that one. Same thing, 90-degree angle, and do any touching up that you need to on your squares. Very minimal, okay? And the sides look great. So you're going to repeat that to all your blocks until you get them all to be the exact same size. Now I do want to take a second to talk a little bit about the dimensions of the block. If you notice, we've only pieced in or taken in some of the fabric along the sides that have the seams put in. Meaning, we took up in here in this seam that we stitched, we took up a 1/4 inch from this fabric, a 1/4 inch from this one. So on this side, we've taken up a full 1/2 inch, and the same thing applies on this side. A 1/4 inch is taken up from this fabric, and a 1/4 inch on the center piece as well. So that's another 1/2 inch. So 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1 inch. Meaning, across this way on our block, we started off with 10 inches. Now it's going to finish at about 9 inches. That's 1 full inch that got taken in. It's more of a rectangle, right? So this is the 9 inches from here to here, but from here to here, we haven't pieced in anything. So that means we should still have the 10-inch going this way. So if you notice, your blocks are actually going to be rectangles, which is perfectly fine because you're doing the same thing to all of your blocks, meaning they're all going to be consistent. A lot of times people think they need to trim down to an actual square. You typically do that because you need to attach it to other pieces and you want everything to be the same. If you're repeating the technique that I showed you in this video here to recreate the exact same block using the same start off pieces of 10 inches by 10 inches square, that means all your blocks are going to finish about the same. And that means you don't have to cut them down to make them into an actual square. They can be a rectangle because as we put them side by side to piece them, they are going to match up perfectly. Okay, so just continue to do that to all your blocks. Don't worry about trimming them down to a square, okay? I'd rather you keep them as a rectangle so you get the look here, but also so that you're not wasting fabric. I prefer to have the fabric inside the quilt top so I can get more size to it and not waste any of my fabric, okay? So then you're going to trim all your blocks up, and then you can head over to your design wall to play around with the design composition that you'd like to achieve with your finished quilt top. And here we are on my design wall. Just to give you an idea, you would play around with your blocks to kind of orient them how you want, as scrappy as you want, the kind of finished look that you want on the design. Play around with it here, and then you'll start to piece them together into your different sections. So you can see that the bottom half of the quilt here is still in individual blocks, and then these 2 rows up here have already been pieced together, okay? And so obviously you have some points and intersections here that you'd like to try and match. If you don't, it's not the end of the world, but just know that you are striving to try and get these ones to match. So you'll notice there'll be 2 points right here at the bottom of the lava lamp shape that will match up with the other row or whatever the block is underneath. So you'll want to match up those 2 intersecting points, and then all the points where the individual blocks meet the next one. So here, 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 and then again the 2 at every point on top and bottom of that lava lamp shape. Okay, so it's not that much. If you do some minimal trimming, it'll probably make it a little bit easier for you. But again, in my case, I haven't even trimmed all of these down. Some of them are a little off, which is fine because I can still make it work. And so I kind of wanted to show you all the different types of things that you can make with my 10-inch slicer ruler. So this quilt, for example, was just one of the stacks of the 10-inch by 10-inch squares. And this wasn't a full stack. I think it only came with 20 something, 24 maybe. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 20. I think it came with the 20. So this was one of those half stacks. And all you really have are 20 squares to work with. But the fact that you can create this really modern and bold and different looking quilt using every bit of those 20 squares, and I would say that this looks a lot better than just 20 squares sewn together into kind of a gridded pattern, right? You get a really bold, modern, geometric design. There's no fabric waste, and you can literally crank these projects out in a couple of days, in a weekend. They make great baby quilts if you need one. Just do it like this, 5 blocks by 4. If you want to extend the size of the quilt, and maybe you only have one of those 10-inch stacks of squares, you can always add yardage to extend the size in either dimension of the quilt. For example, if instead of sewing together my blocks, my rows here, you can add strips of a solid, a contrasting, or a coordinating print in between the rows to kind of elongate the quilt. If it's just the right size, but you think, you know, it's for a young child who maybe is going to outgrow a crib size quilt a little bit quickly, feel free to include some strips of a solid coordinating print in between the rows just to kind of add additional length to it. You can add full-blown sashing around each one of your squares. You can also add those kind of sashing strips vertically, going this way instead, if you want to add more length to that dimension of the quilt. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with it, but I hope that you enjoy this tutorial and that you will get the 10-inch slicer so you can try it out on a variety of projects. Remember that when you purchase my rulers, you get a free video library of archived projects that include all the step-by-step instructions on how to make them. This lava lamp quilt is one of them, and I hope that you will give it a try. So I'm going to head back to my sewing machine and finish piecing this one together, but I just wanted to show you so you have an idea of how it comes together. Create the individual blocks, play around with the design, piece them together, and go ahead and finish off your quilt. Alright, so that's it for this video tutorial. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make the lava lamp quilt block using my 10-inch slicer. It definitely takes a little bit of practice, but go ahead and give it a try. If you don't have your 10-inch slicer ruler just yet, remember I always include a link in the description box below the video right here on YouTube on where you can go to my online shop and purchase the ruler for yourself. I've also included a free archived library full of step-by-step video instructions for different projects that you can make with both my 10-inch slicer and my 5-inch slicer rulers, and I'll leave you the link to that page as well. Thanks again for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit it with that thumbs up below. Share it across the different social media sites. If you give this lava lamp block a try, make sure to snap some pictures, and you can post them either directly to my Facebook page, or you can also tag me on different social media platforms using the hashtags Crafty Gemini and 10-inch slicer. I can't wait to see the projects that you're going to be creating with my ruler, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit it with the thumbs up below, share it across the different social media sites with your other crafty friends, and thanks again for watching. Remember, click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! If you give the lava lamp, if you try this block out using my ruler, also tag me on social media sites, and I will see you in the next one. Deuces.